That's key to the preparation. I completely believe in this methodology of preview, study, review. So after we study, there has to be a review by all of you. Now let's start today with the discussion on the next chapter, which is for entrepreneurship. Now there's no doubt I cannot overemphasize the importance of entrepreneurship in India and in India's growth. And since years, policymakers have been debating on how to make India a global manufacturing hub. And that's the reason because entrepreneurship can solve multiple problems for the nation, right from creating employment, right from balanced economic growth, right from increase in the national output. So there are multiple benefits which a nation, which a economy will have if the entrepreneurship is developed and promoted. Now, Modi government took this initiative in the month of September 2014 when they came up with this policy or this program called Make in India, and it's one of the most beautiful scheme, most transforming scheme which India has ever launched. Now, this Make in India scheme is based on four pillars, is what Narendra Modi had said in the speech. First, new processes is what we are going to focus on. Second, it's going to be new infrastructure, and the government has been investing a lot on developing infrastructure facilities in India. Third is new sectors. So they have identified 25 sectors in the scheme. Some of that are already appearing on the screen. And last pillar was the new mindset. So that was one of the biggest challenge, that because we are accustomed to a particular mindset that how a government works as a regulator. Now, Make in India's attempt was to change this mindset completely. And this entire Make in India program is built on the layers of collaboration, collaborative effort. So there have been support from union governments, state governments, and that's because of the Niti Aayog which was introduced, because that works completely on cooperative federalism. So that's what the focus of the government was when they introduced this scheme, Make in India. And since then, in the immediate next year, when there were surveys conducted, so there is a survey called Economic Confidence Index, and India ranked highest when it came to a favored destination in India. Today, India is the ninth largest country economy wise, and when it comes to receiving FDI. So it's definitely becoming one of the favored destination. And in the present scenario, it seems that this anti-China wave, which is going on in the global economic scenario, is also going to help India to boost up their manufacturing facilities in India. So, in this chapter, primarily we are discussing about those schemes which government has taken, initiatives from the government, which are going to help the nation, which are going to promote entrepreneurship in India. So this is the first scheme, and FDI limits have already increased, liberalized, and in 1920 financial year, India has recorded the highest total of FDI ever came in the country in a particular financial year, with the statistics showing that approximately $74 billion were invested in India in that last financial year as a foreign direct investment. So that's really a good sign. Second scheme which we are going to discuss about is the Stand Up India scheme. Now, this scheme is focused on promoting entrepreneurship in scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and for promoting women entrepreneurship. Now, this scheme is primarily for providing financial assistance to scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and women who want to take up entrepreneurship. And in this scheme, the eligibility criteria is it has to be a greenfield project. Now, there are two types of projects. It's a terminology which is used. Greenfield means any project which starts from the scratch. And brownfield projects means something which is already in existence. And when you build on the same project, then that is a brownfield project. Second eligibility criteria is this promoters of the organization, or if it is a sole proprietorship, the owners have to be from scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, or women entrepreneurs, or a combination of these, and they should have attained the age of majority. Now, if there are organization, then the criteria is 51% of the shareholding and controlling stake should be by such eligible category, and they should not be in default to any bank or financial institution for any credit facility if they have availed in the past. So if they are appearing in the defaulters list, then they are not eligible. So what is the benefit or the facility which is going to be provided under this scheme? So first is the loan will be provided. It will be a credit facility ranging between 10 lakhs to 1 crore. So 1 million to 10 million is what is going to be the size of loan. And the purpose, as we discussed above, it's going to be for greenfield project. So it has to be for a new enterprise, new project. And the criteria which government is going to implement or factor in is 75% of the total project cost can be taken as a finance, but 25% of the project cost has to be by the owner. It had so the margin money will be 25%. The rate of interest will be lowest possible, which will not exceed the base rate plus 3%. So 3% over base rate, 300 basis point, plus the tenor premium depending on what is going to be the duration of the loan. Now, the repayment period, the duration of the loan will be 7 years, and the maximum moratorium period. Now, moratorium period is the period wherein the borrower does not have to pay the EMIs. He does not have to worry about repayment. Repayment will start only after 18 months. So that's what we call it as a moratorium period or a grace period. As regards security, it will be a loan which will be secured by a collateral security, and if someone is not able to provide a collateral security, then they will have to apply for a guarantee from the fund which is created from the scheme. So CGFCL FSCIL is the scheme which has been introduced, wherein an applicant has to make an application for seeking guarantee from this credit guarantee fund, and the bank will decide whether a particular borrower is eligible for the guarantee under this scheme or not. That we have discussed. Margin money we have also discussed. So 25% is the margin money, which can also be provided in convergence with state and central schemes. So 25% money which the investor has or the promoter has to bring in can also be from other schemes which are available, so he can take benefit, subject to he will have to bring at least 10% of the project cost as his own contribution. So if we divide it from 100%, 10% is the minimum he has to invest. Working capital is the capital which is required to carry out the day-to-day activities. So the difference between your current assets and current capital liabilities is what we call it as working capital or a short-term capital, which you need on a day-to-day basis to manage the operations of the organization. So one is a long-term capital which goes in the fixed assets, creation of long-term assets. But for short-term assets, your stock, your inventory, your purchases, your payments to vendors, you need some capital in hand to do the business. Now that is what is covered under working capital. Startup, I guess we discussed yesterday. Uh, so we will skip that. And now we will shift to Skill India. Now, in order to support entrepreneurship, you have to have new infrastructure to give the boost. But as much as we need facilities, as much as we need capital, we also need manpower and we need skilled labor. And if we have to achieve growth in the rural parts of this country, if we have to achieve balanced economic growth, and we want more and more investors to go and set up the manufacturing plant or their businesses in the backward areas or rural areas or semi-urban areas. One challenge which government foresee was the availability of skilled labor. So it is also going to be important that how the capacity building work is carried out in the country. Because if we see the statistics, we have a population of over 1.2 billion. And of that, 572 million people are under the age of 24. So we have almost half of the population as youth, which means we have a working population of 50%, which is less than 24%, which is a very good sign if we see it as a nation. And therefore, these youth needs to be trained, they need to be provided necessary skill set so that they become employable. So as much as generating employment is important, it is also important that to work on the other area and make people employable, because no organization who is purely running with a business mindset is going to recruit people who are not suited for the job. That's the worst mistake, and everyone will refrain from committing that kind of mistake. Therefore, the role of this National Skill Development Corporation increases. It's primarily a non-profit organization created by the government in partnership with private sector enterprises, which includes Chamber of Commerces like MCCI, FICCI. Uh, these Chamber of Commerces and the ministry has partnered and created this organization with the objective to promote skill development and capacity building, uh, and the way they are going to achieve this is by setting up of the institutes to provide vocational training. Now vocational training means training for a particular type of job, particular type of tasks. There are many big groups who have created their own non-profit organizations. So I know Tatas have one, Reliance have one, where they impart training to youth, and then after the training is imparted and they become uh, capable to perform the tasks, they are then recruited in their other group entities. That is how they are taking this important task of skill development ahead and uh, helping the government as well as the nation to solve the problem of unemployment. Now, there are certain schemes which have been launched. So, Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Kendra is one of the scheme which was introduced, where the ministry intends to set up training centers in every district of the country, and NSDC, the organization which has been created, is the agency who is going to implement this project. Now, the objective of this training centers is going to be to create the benchmark institutions, to create that level of institutions where quality is not compromised and the value or the focus is given to competency based skill training. So the focus is quality, sustainability, and connection with the stakeholders in the skill delivery process. And there are many government, state governments who are now partnering and setting up such projects. In this, the role of government is that they help with the finance, and they also guarantee that we will commit at least a minimum number of students who will register, so that the organization who is going to partner with the government to create such kind of training centers also does not run into losses. They also make money out of it. At the same time, the objective is also achieved. So 75% of the infrastructure cost is primarily taken care by the fund government, NSDC, which includes machinery, plant and build, land and building, then other training aid and other associated items, whatever is required, softwares are required, whatever support is required in case of setting up the infrastructure will be provided by the government. As regards operation wise support is concerned, as I said earlier, they will be, the institutions or the centers will be assured a dedicated training numbers, and that's the reason more and more private players are also becoming interested in partnering with the government to set up such kind of centers. I have helped few in Andhra Pradesh, in Hyderabad particularly, where the centers have been created to provide IT and IT enabled training services in partnership with the government, state government there. The next scheme or the program which NSDC or the ministry runs is pre-departure orientation training. We call it as PDOT. Now, PDOT is for those people who are going to go out of country and work in foreign jurisdictions. Now, every country has their own unique ways of approaching the work. There are different practices, culture is different, language is different. And if someone is going to go from India, they are going to represent the nation. So to help those migrant workers who are going to go outside India, they also need to be provided training about a destination country, that what needs to be taken care, what are the do's, what are the don'ts. Now, this PDOT training program is conducted in two forms. One, which is a long-term program, which is for almost 160 hours. And then there is a 1 day PDOT training program also, which is a fast track or a short duration project. So longer variant is 160 hours. And this program has been launched in collaboration with Ministry of External Affairs along with Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. And the implementing agency for this program is also NSDC. So NSDC is primarily offering all the support in implementation of uh, the training programs and skill development. Then there is technical intern training program. Now this program is in collaboration with Japanese Industrial Society, where government is going to identify uh, the most competent youth to who will be selected and sent to Japan, and then they will undergo the training, because Japan is known to be best when it comes to systems and policies and processes are concerned. There are so many certifications, Six Sigma, then Kaizen, all these methods which are used in the manufacturing industries as a systems are the gift or originated from Japan only. So for helping the nation to improve their skills with respect to technical uh, matters, including engineering, including systems, including processes, this kind of association has been done where people will be sent from India, and they will be imparted training for a duration between 3 to 5 years. And then these people are going to come back and work in the manufacturing industry in India. So this is where government is also collaborating with the foreign countries to take their help in developing the skill set of the people of India. Now, government has also come out with the skill development and entrepreneurship policies, which was formulated in 2009, and then again it was updated in the year 2015 as a national policy for skill development and entrepreneurship. The primary objective of this policy is to speed up the process and scale the operations and reach out to maximum people possible. So coverage, speed, scalability, and sustainability with maintaining the quality is what the objective of this policy is going to be. I think we'll, yeah. Need for entrepreneurship. I think we discussed this in the beginning that uh, for a nation to grow, it's important that the culture and the environment for entrepreneurs is improved, and that's the reason government is coming up with schemes like Startup India, Make in India, Stand Up India, focusing so much on the skill development. So I think we cannot overemphasize the importance of entrepreneurship development. Some of the reasons why entrepreneurship is important from the Indian economy perspective are given. I think we have covered all this in our discussions. Now let's talk about the bottlenecks in the entrepreneurial growth. Now again, bottlenecks means the challenges. So with few of the challenges for the entrepreneurs are, okay, yes. So few of the challenges obviously is the lack of capital, which is the biggest hurdle in the growth of any organization. There are many ideas who need capital because of lack of resources, and not only capital, lack of resources rather. Many business don't even start or don't even go to the next level. So when a promoter is not able to raise the necessary capital for a business, it can become one of the reason for the organization to close or wind up. Second, uh, as much as net worth is important, it is also important that the promoter or the entrepreneur has a good network, and therefore network helps the organization or the promoter to uh, be more resourceful. So it's okay if I don't have resources, but if I can generate resources, if I am uh, resourceful in nature, I know from where to get help and get the problem solved, I think then it's okay. But if I don't have a resource and I don't know how to generate resources, now that becomes one of the biggest weakness, and it may lead to uh, s- as an obstacle in the growth, or it may also result in closing down of the operations of any startup or any enterprises. Third, and this is a very beautiful research which has been done, led by one of the famous industrialists from Pune, the founder of Persistent Systems. I heard him one in one of the forums where he said that there comes a phase in the life of an organization, primarily a small enterprises. So when they are small, they do some things, they put in hard work. With their hard work and dedication, they reach to a level, and many are not able to breach that level and go to the next level. So there comes a level where everyone gets stuck, and few only can breach that limit and go to the next level. And the biggest reason which has been identified is the promoters are not uh, willing to or capable to make a shift in their mindset that now I have reached to a level, and there are things which I need to delegate, and there are things which only I will have to do. So when it's small, you do everything, but when you reach to a level, your roles changes, your responsibility changes. Hence, the way you approach your work also has to change. So that becomes another issue in the entrepreneurial growth. Another reason for some of the organizations who have failed, and I have seen a couple of them in front of my eyes, is when they get success too easy and too fast. So, if the organization does not have the necessary strength in terms of systems and processes and the leadership skills, they won't be able to take the burden which comes along with the success. So, it's not the success only which is necessary, it's also important that we have necessary systems in place. That is important. So these are some of the bottlenecks or challenges which every organization can face. And the most important is what is the mindset of an entrepreneur. So leadership skill plays a very, very important role. Either you should be a good leader, or you should hire a leader who is an exceptional in leading the organization. And if an ego of a promoter comes in, that how can I bring someone who will rule the organization or lead the organization, then the organization will not have a good future. So that's the reason when Steve Jobs realized, okay, it's cracking. Okay, all of you facing challenges with respect to my voice. Am I audible clearly? Okay. So those who are facing issues, check the bandwidth at your end. There may be issue with the internet connectivity at your end. And so where was I? Yeah. That's the reason Steve Jobs realized that I need to bring in someone who is good in marketing, and therefore he goes to the chief of marketing of Pepsi and gives him an offer he cannot reject. And that's why he bring a person who is better in doing a particular activity and does not bring his ego in between. And if you would have seen a movie which is made on the life of Steve Jobs, he also is not hesitant to go and partner with a competitor, which is Microsoft, and work in collaboration because he sees a different future for the organization. So if you bring in emotions, if you bring in your personal ego as an entrepreneur, then that also becomes one of the biggest challenge in the entrepreneurial growth. Okay. Now, we will go to the last chapter first and then come back to this one. So too much noise is what I said. When you get too much of a success and too easy, then it's creates a problem for some. Not for everyone, but it needs a different level of maturity to handle that kind of stardom which the initial success can bring in. And I can give you examples where I have seen the businesses collapsing when they were not able to sustain that growth. Sometimes you have to be adaptable, adapt with the changing times. So entities like Nokia, Kodak are one of the best examples who failed to adapt to the changing scenario and were thrown out of the industry, kind of. Then there was another success story called BlackBerry. So they had a huge success in the mobile handset market because they had this good feature of BBM Messenger. And then over a period of time, we also saw that they were also kind of thrown out of the organization, industry. There is one video which is available on YouTube where uh, I won't say the name, but you go and check it out on your own, where a very famous person from the same industry laughs at Steve Jobs when he announces that I'm going to come up with a phone which will not have a keypad. And he was laughed at. And today we see people hardly buy any phone which has a keypad. We all are habitual of touch phone. So he saw a vision then, people laughed at him, and then all those who laughed are no more a player in the industry. So it takes a different type of maturity and emotional balance to changing times, go through the crisis, and that's where I said the entrepreneur leadership skill plays a very, very crucial role. Now let's go to the last chapter and then we'll come to the square one. Last, I have a small. Just a second. Okay, give me a minute, guys. Let me connect. So this PPT is already there in the drive. It's already there, guys. Please check it out. It's there. Yeah. So let's talk about some of the key government institutions. First being Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog, when we were talking about 5-year plans, we mentioned about Niti Aayog, why this came into existence. So one of the disadvantage of 5-year plans was that sometimes a 5-year plan does not work. You need to have short plans. You need to have flexibility in your planning. Second, you also need to take what happens at the micro level, at the ground level. So making a policy and then implementing without realizing what are the challenges in implementation of a plan will become one of the reason for that plan to fail. So you need to take a different approach is what government realized. Instead of a top-down approach, it's better to take a bottom-up approach. A link you want me to send again? Okay. Anyone who has the link handy, can you please post it for all? got it. Thank you so much. I have posted for the benefit of all. You can take that. Thank you so much, guys. Yeah. And with that approach, uh, obviously, another challenge in 5-year plan was it kind of became a power center. And before a 5-year plan was scheduled to be announced, we used to see so many ministries, departments, heads roaming around 5-year plan, 5-year planning commission's office, and to kind of create an influence. And hence, with such kind of challenges, the government changed their way of their approach towards planning, towards strategy designing, and they came up with this concept of creating an organization called Niti Aayog, where Niti stands for National Institution for Transforming India. It is also known as the think tank of India, where all the thinking is done. Now, the beautiful thing which they have done with Niti Aayog is they have an approach which is a bottom-up approach. So the plans are made after what the study is done at the ground level, and considering their challenges, necessary plans are made. Second feature of Niti Aayog is that they have partnered with the third party institutions which are specialized in research, development, and planning, strategizing. So they have collaborated with the experts. There is a possibility to invite an expert if a government has to address a particular situation and there is a need for an expert's guidance. So the experts are recruited, appointed temporarily on the council, and then when the matter is resolved, the experts leave the council also. So there is a temporary position which is also created for such kind of situations. Third, every plan may not be for the nation. Some region have very specific issues. So there is no need for the entire council to sit. This chapter PDF is not there. Okay, I will upload it. Don't worry. And therefore, the where was I? Ah. So every region may have a very different and a unique situation. So this Niti Aayog also have the feature or a facility where a separate temporary council will be created to address a issue for a particular region. It's not necessary for the entire planning commission or the entire council to sit. Sometimes you need to address a problem which is very specific to a region, to a ministry, to a department, and hence there has to be that kind of flexibility. Another important principle on which Niti Aayog work is what we call it as cooperative federalism, wherein every state government, every union territory government has a seat on the table. They also have a presence in the Ayog. So it's not that it's a power center, it is a concept which is based on collaborative effort, which is seeking cooperation from every stakeholder. They all have say in this process of coming out with the plans or uh, thinking activity of the nation. So that's a difference between the approaches between Planning Commission and Niti Aayog. As regards composition of this Niti Aayog is concerned, the Prime Minister is the chairperson, the chairman, and the governing council consists of all the chief ministers of state governments and lieutenant governors of union territories. Then the regional councils will be created to address particular issues and possibilities affecting more than one state. So these will be formed for a specific term and on need basis. Then there is also a possibility to invite eminent speakers, experts, specialists who have relevant domain knowledge, and this will be nominated by the Prime Minister, the chairman of the Ayog. And then there can be ad hoc membership on a temporary basis. Ex officio members can be appointed, and then there is a CEO also. Mr. Kant, I think, is the CEO right now. So it works like a body corporate only, where there is a body of shareholders who take a decision, and then there is a managing director who has the responsibility to execute the plans. Yeah, Amitabh Kant, right? So that is how the council works, and the CEO is accountable to the council when it comes to implementation. So, sometimes this accountability feature is missing, and this also becomes one of the reason why some of the entrepreneurs, one of the challenge in entrepreneur growth is, in most of the organizations, the promoter is not accountable to anyone. So the employees are accountable to their bosses, but the boss is not accountable to anyone. And if that kind of situation sometimes can become a reason why the organization collapses. So in the Niti Aayog, there is accountability feature already taken care of, where there is an accountability that when a plan is made, it's a duty of a CEO to implement the plan. He's accountable to the entire council if anything is not going as per what was decided. So that's important. And on the same note, on the same point, but something different from the subject matter, we all must find someone in our life to whom we are accountable. Because when you are accountable, the chances of your growth increases. So research was conducted by an organization, Harvard University, and they said a good plan ensures only 10% of success or 40% of success. If you back it up with willpower, discipline, it ensures you 65% of success. But when you back it up with accountability, the chance of success increases to 90%. And hence, be it an organization or at an individual level, we should have someone to whom we are accountable. If we have the maturity to make ourselves accountable to someone, then it takes courage, because we will be breaking comfort zones. It's not easy when someone asks you a question, "Bhai, kya ho raha hai? What's happening?" It's not easy. We don't like it. It's against the human tendency, but this is a sure short formula for getting a success in life. So please do consider and have someone to whom you are accountable. Okay. So what are the objectives? These are some of the objectives of Niti Aayog. We'll quickly rush through. Active participation of states. National agenda is there with participation from all the states, and that's what promote cooperative federalism is, which is also known as marble cake federalism, through well-ordered support initiatives. Construct methods to formulate a reliable strategy at village level and aggregate these gradually at higher levels. So that's what I said when I said about bottom up approach. So they have an approach which comes from the micro level and goes on to the macro level. Unlike what was there in Planning Commission, it was a top to bottom approach. Economic policy with national security interests. So recently there was a news which came from the Reserve Bank of India and Ministry of Finance, wherein all the countries who are sharing the land borders with India, if they may want to make an investment in India, they need to take an approval from the government. So most of the decisions like this, most of the decisions like this are taken by Niti Aayog, and there are some applications where government approval is required. It's the Niti Aayog which looks into such matters and then decides whether an approval needs to be given or not. So, considering the national security interest, such kind of changes are introduced, economic policy is modified. And in 2015, that's the reason Ministry of Finance in their finance bill proposed that the power to make policies with respect to foreign investment be shifted from Reserve Bank of India to central government. And it was a very right step taken at that time. However, it took 4 years for the parliament to give consent to it. In the last year only, the parliament gave consent and the power shifted from RBI to government when it comes to policy making. So now there is a kind of balance and tandem. For some matters, RBI can have the right to come out with a new rule, but for matters relating to foreign investments, especially, the power has been shifted to central government. Pay special consideration to sections of the society that may be at risk of not profiting satisfactorily for economic progress. So one of the objective is to ensure there is a balanced economic growth and not a growth which results in creation of dominant forces in the market. That's against the competition, and for any economy to grow, the competition has to be promoted. There has to be a healthy competition, and then only the balanced economic growth is possible. And it works in the favor of all. So it's a mutual win-win situation. Propose strategy and long-term policy and program frameworks and initiatives, review their progress, effectiveness. Okay. Educational and policy research institutions. So very recently we have seen that a government has come out with a new education policy. That's again a beautiful step taken in the right direction. The educational system in India needed a complete revamp, and that's what has been attained. And there is a big role played by Niti Aayog in such kind of decisions. Knowledge, innovation, and entrepreneurial support system through shared community of national and international experts. So just to highlight on this, in the next slide, we are going to discuss about a program which has been initiated under the guidance and in collaboration with Niti Aayog, where the country has partnered with some of the top institutions from the world, and they have taken up a project for the development of the education sector and the health sector. We'll discuss that in the next slide. Provide platform, okay. Preserve a state of art resource center, be a repository of research on good governance and best practices in sustainable and equitable development. Effectively screen and assess the implementation of programs. So that's what I meant when I said accountability, and identifying the needed resources to strengthen the likelihood of success. So there is a flexibility. If in between something is not going wrong, it's the objective of Niti Aayog to ensure that necessary resources are deployed to ensure that we get success out of a particular scheme. So it's not that a policy is framed and then done. They are constantly reviewing, screening, assessing, and making necessary amendments to ensure the success. Pay attention to technology improvement and capacity building. So I think I don't need to talk much on technology improvement. We are seeing how the technology, so there is a scheme or a program of the government. So Make in India, Digital India, Skill India. Now, Digital India is all about bringing in technology because technology can solve a lot of problems. There are cons, but there are more pros. And we, in the near future, we cannot, or rather now also, we cannot imagine our world without technology. So we talking on this platform is all because of a technology. 10 years ago, but today it's a common phenomena. It's a new normal, what we say. To undertake other necessary activities in order to the implementation of national development agenda and objectives. Now, this is the program I was talking about, Sustainable Action for Transforming Human Capital, which is SAT. Now here the focus is education and health, and what they have done, they have identified 3 states which will be called as a role model states: Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, and Odisha. Now they have partnered with Boston Consulting Group, which is known as one of the top research institution, BCG. And BCG is an advisor to many countries, many business leaders take help from such group. Then there is Piramal Foundation of Education Leadership, an Indian organization in consortium with Niti Aayog, which will act as a facilitator and coordinator in the process. The program aims to transform elementary and secondary school education across 3 states. And the plan was expected to be completed in the year 2020. And I think we are on track. Once this situation resumes normalcy, I think we'll hear some news about that. Okay. Now let's talk about MCA. I'll, I'll need 1 minute. I'll resume back in 1 minute. Give me 1 minute at least. Okay. So the next government institution for which we are going to discuss is MCA. And sorry. So the next institute is MCA. And very soon, when you will be a qualified company secretary, and during your internship also, you will be interacting the most with this ministry in your internship or in your professional assignments after qualification. Because he is responsible for the supervision, regulation, and administration of Companies Act, Limited Liability Partnership, then Competition Act, and this is also the area where uh, uh, we as a company secretaries work a lot, and that's the reason the ministry also exercises supervision over all the three professional bodies: ICAI, ICSI, and ICMAI. Because most of the reportings which are done to ministry by body corporates, companies, LLPs, needs to be certified by a professional. And if there is an error or a mistake committed by a professional in certifying a document or reporting something which is not correct or not reporting a relevant finding in their report, then the ministry also has a right to take an action. There are provisions in the Companies Act section 447, 448, which allows the ministry to initiate an action against such misrepresentation or wrong reporting. And we have seen in the news also against some professional firms, an action has already been taken to debar them from carrying out their professional assignments, and the matter is under discussion and in the legal courts. So they exercise supervision over three bodies, and I have seen MCA also issuing notices to professionals if they come across a situation where a certification has not been done after due diligence. And a letter is also sent to the respective institute to carry out the disciplinary action. Now, ministry has multiple departments, offices. There is a hierarchy which is there for implementation and for better administrative control. So there is an office called Registrar of Companies, then regional director at region level, then ministry at national level. Then there are few agencies or departments which are created called as, let's say there is one called as Central Registries, CRC we call, which has the responsibility for all the incorporations which happen in the country. So it's all nationalized, it's all centralized now. Earlier, the approvals were given by respective region registrar of companies, but Long Bank Ministry took this decision, and all the approvals with respect to registration, business approvals, incorporations are with the central agency now. And that was primarily to speed up the process of granting approvals and reduce the time which is taken to start a business in India. Another affiliated office of MCA is SFIO. So there are companies against which the investigation is initiated, maybe on a suo motu basis or on the complaint or information received from a third party or from the government. The ministry orders investigation, and then SFIO takes control and charge of the investigation in such matters. Competition Commission of India also comes within the control of MCA. Now, what is the role of Competition Commission? So every combination, so that's what the word is used in the law, combination, but for our understanding, we can say every merger or amalgamation, which can result in creation of an organization which will be a dominant organization or which has the potential to become a dominant organization in the industry, has to first take a consent from a competition commission. Now, why it has to take a consent? Because if any player in the market becomes a dominant player because of two big giants getting merged, then it is not good for the competition. Hence, such kind of combinations or mergers need a consent from Competition Commission. An office which comes within the jurisdiction of MCA. Third affiliated office is IICA, so Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs. All the department heads, all the resources which are deployed in MCA have to be well versed with the developments which happen in the laws, Companies Act or other laws. So their training, their education, their upgradation is a responsibility of IICA. Plus, recently, last year rather, IICA has launched a new course for the independent directors. So any person who wants to become an independent director has to first clear an exam which is conducted by IICA. So that's the role which IICA is playing. anyone can go and appear this organization, this exam, if you have reached the eligible age, attend that eligible age, then this exam can be given by anyone, and they maintain a data bank of all those who have appeared and qualified the exam. And any company who intends to appoint an independent director has to first ensure that such person has qualified that exam, unless they are exempted from appearing in the exams. So even professionals like CACS, CMAs have to undergo this examination, and it's an online exam. You can appear for this sitting at home at your comfort. So not a very difficult, but you have to have a basic knowledge of what are the boardroom cultures, what are the boardroom practices, good governance practices. That's something which you can study and then appear for the exams. SFIO is a fraud investigation office. So if, like last year, there have been many scams which came on surface, including DSK, including ILFS, including Punjab National Bank scam. So all these scams or frauds which come on the surface, MCF is having a department who takes care of these investigations, and that's the primary role of SFI. The next government institution is SEBI. So why was SEBI formed? First, to protect the investors in the securities, interest of investors. That's the primary objective of SEBI. Because prior to SEBI being in action or SEBI being created, we had a stock market and we saw many things not going right. And after SEBI also, it's not that SEBI has ensured that everything is foolproof. They have also learned from their mistakes. But the number of scams, like initially there was a big scam, Harshat Mehta. But after SEBI, then we had Ketan Parekh. So all these scams which have come, where people have taken the advantage of the loopholes in the system, and the investors are the one who have suffered loss. I think that's what the role of SEBI has been, to work in the area to protect the interest of investors and to promote development and regulate the securities market and any other matter which is connected there. So that's the objective with which SEBI was formed in the year 1992. Primary functions of SEBI: to regulate the issuers of securities, so primary market, protect the interest of traders who do the intraday trading in the stock exchange, to protect the interest of investors, and to regulate the financial intermediaries is what the role of SEBI is, the function of SEBI. They have threefold power. One, a quasi-judicial. Quasi-judicial power means SEBI itself has a regulating authority or a body who will pass the orders, who will levy the penalty, who will levy the cost in matters of contravention. So there is no need to go to a court or a separate judicial authority for deciding on the matters of contravention of the capital market related transaction. SEBI itself has the authority, and there is an appellate tribunal also within the SEBI where a challenge can be made against the orders. Then there are quasi legislative powers, which means they don't have to wait for the parliament to pass a law or a rule. They don't need a consent there. They have the powers to come out with rules, regulations with respect to matters related to stock exchange. Therefore, there are n number of regulations, rules coming every now and then, amendments happening, and all is done by the SEBI. They don't need the consent from the central government as such. And then there are obviously quasi-executive power. They have the powers to uh, take necessary action with respect to routine administration and execution of the transactions at the stock exchange level or capital market level. Now let's talk about RBI. So we have in the chapter related to Indian financial market, we had seen that RBI is one of the regulator responsible for regulating the operations in the money market. But let's also discuss how the RBI has come into existence. Now, the act which governs the Reserve Bank of India is an act passed under in the year 1934. That is pre-independence era. And the process to create a central bank had started in the year 1926 when a Hilton Young Commission, which is also known as Royal Commission, that the banking activity of the government has to be in a separate hands and not in the control of the bank government. But first time when this recommendation was made, it was not approved. Again in the year 1933, a recommendation in form of a white paper was presented, and then a bill was presented which finally got a consent in the year 1934, and from 1935 RBI came into existence. Initially, RBI was created as a company with a paid up capital of 5 crores, and later on it was nationalized as a central bank. Today, RBI has control over all the banks, commercial banks, then cooperative banks. Then they are also responsible for implementation of Foreign Exchange Management Act, responsible and have regulatory powers under Banking Regulation Act. They also powers under Payments and Settlement Systems Act. They have also powers under Government Securities Act 2006. Yeah, and also they regulate functioning of non-banking financial companies. So they have such wide powers. Plus, they are the one who come up with the monetary policies. So monetary policy with respect any decision with respect to change in the monetary policy is within the control of Reserve Bank of India. So we have one governor, and then there are deputy governors, then there are board members, and then there is a hierarchy which is defined. But governor is the one which has the maximum powers under Reserve Bank of India. Okay, so we discussed. So these are the functions of RBI: issuing banknotes, monetary policy functions, public debt functions, FEMA transactions, banking regulation, regulation and supervision of NBFC. So prudential norms with respect to bank, NBFC, how much should be the capital coverage ratio, how much should be the cash reserve ratio, what will be the repo rate. All these decisions are taken by RBI. Then regulation vision of cooperative banks, derivative and money market instruments, payment and settlement functions, and lastly, consumer protection function. So there is a scheme called Banking Ombudsman Scheme, where any person who has any complaint to be made against any bank which is operating in India, you can just go on that portal, it's created separately, make an application, give a reference of your transactions, and submit the application, and the RBI will take up the matter against the particular bank, investigate, and pass the necessary orders here. So they have the facility where consumer grievances are also addressed by the Reserve Bank of India if there is any consumer who has suffered or not been treated well by any bank because of any transaction. Plus, they also keep on creating awareness. So we see a lot of advertisements now on the television, on the social media, on the internet, that please refrain from sharing your OTPs. No bank will ask ever you the OTP. RBI is never going to call and ask for OTPs. So that's the kind of investor or consumer awareness programs which RBI has been carrying out. Next is IBBI. So IBBI stands for anyone? Yeah. Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India. Now, this is a new law which came in the year 2016, a very important law, uh, uh, a kind of milestone by the nation. Now, this particular paragraph which is there is very important. And so, what is the objective of this law? So, let's start reading. This is this key pillar of ecosystem responsible for implementation of the code. Code is Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. Now, what is that code? The code has consolidated, means any other law which was in existence prior to this law came in has been consolidated and replaced by this code. So no earlier law for this subject is in place. It has been replaced because it has been consolidated in this law, and amends the law relating to reorganization and insolvency resolution of corporate persons, partnership firms, and individuals. So, all the matters related to reorganization, insolvency of companies, LLPs, firms, sole proprietaries in a time bound manner. That's the most important feature. So, 180 days plus 90 to 70 days is the maximum time which is there in the law provided for resolution of insolvency. But the resolution has to be for maximization the value of assets and to promote entrepreneurship. So if winding up is the only option, then and the business can survive, then it's not that every application filed, petition filed will lead to closure of business winding up. There is a possibility of revamp, and if that is available, then the government will first focus on revamping the organization. And then if nothing is possible, if it's the last resort is to close down, then only it will go to that level. As of the firms and individuals, so it's only the corporate persons rest now. Also conducts an exam where any person who wants to act as an insolvency resolution professional, because in the process of handling the matters, every company which has filed a petition, any creditor who has filed a petition against a body corporate has to appoint a resolution professional. Now that insolvency resolution professional can only be the one who has qualified the exam. So there are eligibility criteria. For example, a professional from CACS institutes having 10 years plus post qualification experience only can appear for this exam. And once they have cleared, they can be a insolvency resolution professional. So they take care of conducting the organization, ensuring that the professionals are working in compliance with the law. That's the role of an IBBI. Then comes IBBI. You just go and search, you will get IRP, Insolvency Resolution Professional. Then we have NCLT and NCLAT. Now, this is not a new concept or a new regulator. The attempt to bring in this regulator judicial authority, the process was started in the year 2000, 2002 only, but it took almost 14-15 years for this judicial authority to come into force. So a lot happened in the background. The matter went to Supreme Court also, where the constitution and validity of this institution was challenged by the government, and then the Madras High Court and Supreme Court then also validated the constitutionally validity of this institution. So, like this was introduced in the Company Second Amendment Act 2002 on the recommendation of a high-level committee headed by Justice Balakrishna Reddy. However, constitutionality of the establishment of NCLT was challenged in the Madras High Court. The Madras High Court, by its order dated March 4, held the establishment and vesting in them powers was not unconstitutional. So they upheld the validity. But various provisions under Companies Act suffered from constitutional infirmities which had to be sufficiently amended. They said it is valid, but you need to make some changes in the law, and then this can be created. Then the matter went to Supreme Court, where Supreme Court and the constitutional bench of Supreme Court finally in May 2010 upheld the decision of Madras High Court almost after 6 years. And again, they also said that there are certain changes required in the law to remove the defects and make them constitutional. And then, along with the IBC, because IBC matters are also handled at NCLT. In the year 2016, in the same year when IBC was introduced, Ministry finally notified the Constitution, and the CLB, Company Law Board, which used to be the authority under Companies Act, was abolished, and all the matters which were there with CLB got transferred to NCLT. Now, with the increase in the number of cases being handled by NCLT, the workload, last year and last to last year, Ministry also made certain amendments in the Companies Act so that to decongest the workload at NCLT, and the powers were shifted from NCLT to ROC and regional directors. Now, any matter which goes to NCLT can be challenged in the National Company Law Appellate Tribunal, which we also call it as NCLAT. So NCLAT has the powers to set aside, modify, confirm the decisions of NCLT, and they are not bound by the CPC, so Civil Procedure Code, but shall be guided by the principles of natural justice. NCLAT is an appellate authority established for dealing with appeals arising out of decisions of NCLT. So this is all about NCLT, and NCLT orders can be challenged in the Supreme Court. So it's NCLT is at the same level at which High Court is. So this is all about the last chapter. Now let's talk about the 7th chapter. So the first part I'm going to skip. I'm going to talk about this ease of doing business index. So the latest report is not 2019, 2020 report also is available on the portal. So you can go on the Google and check. Now India's rank is 63 in the DBR report 2020, and it's really been a phenomenal journey for India, because in last 3-4 years India has constantly improved their ratings. Now, this index is a kind of ranking given by the organization World Bank, that which country has offered more facilities for the foreign investors to do business. The better the ranking, the better will be the chances of country getting foreign investments. So there are parameters which are decided. So there are parameters which we call it indicators. So there are 10 indicators, 8 indicators, where the performance is evaluated, and then based on the performance the report is published and the ranking is given. Now, some of the major improvement which has happened in the last few years is with respect to construction permits. The time required, the number of procedures have reduced significantly. So ranks, yes, the primarily you will have to go through that. And I also suggest to go and check the latest report. Now, what are the major steps which were taken? So let me just quickly touch upon the steps taken to improve the uh, starting of business performance indicator. So a lot has changed in last few years, but I have also done my work when the online filing was not there. Only reporting used to happen in the physical mode. And from those days where we had to stand in queue for 2 days when the annual reports were to be submitted, and the queue used to be of 5 floors, 6 floors. People used to stand in the staircases and stand in the queue since night for their number to come at 10. From those days to uploading the returns, sitting at the comfort of your home. Yes, questions can come. I think we have come a far ahead, and there is still a long way to go, because if you still see the countries like Singapore, where you can incorporate a company within an hour. Actually, within an hour, you can set up a company, and I have personally done helped few clients to do that, and it doesn't take more than 1 hour after you have shared all the information and documents. In 1 hour, you get the certificate. In India, the time is still, as per the latest report, it's still 10 days, which is taken to start a company in India. 10 days, as per the latest report. So the processes still need to improve further, and the government is actively working, aggressively working in that domain. And we are also following what is being followed in Singapore as a sample basis approach, is what I have heard informally. And the timelines are going to be reduced further. So as of now, when you start a company, there are multiple approvals which are received in the same application. So when you file for the incorporation, you get your company registered, you get your director's identification number, we get PAN number, we get TAN number, we get GST registration, we get Provident Fund registration, we get CIN is corporate identification number. We get Provident Fund registration, we get professional tax registration, and now even the bank account opening facility is also being merged with the same incorporation process. So That's one of the development which has happened. You can go through the latest report and the remaining indicators which are given. I think this is good. Okay. So last few words of advice. Tomorrow, I think we'll have 1 hour doubt clearing session. So note down all your doubts, and tomorrow we will address all the questions. Before I hang up for the day, I think the most, so for all your questions with respect to examination also, I think there is a session arranged tomorrow. Please do attend that session, and all your queries, administrative queries, will get resolved. I'm not the right person to speak about that because I don't have any insight or information about it. So extremely sorry on that front. Last few words of advice from my end will be to please go through the entire curriculum once. You read the entire module word by word, line by line. At least once you should have read everything, and then uh, focus on the important topics. And the curriculum is not that vast, so it's not that you're going to take good amount of time to revise it. The Now, because this is the first ever exam which is going to happen in the CACT, so you are going to rather inaugurate this attempt. We will also get a lot of clarity about what is the uh, approach of the examiner. So anything I comment now on what is important, what is not, it will not have any basis. So let few exams go, and then only we'll have a clarity. In my opinion, the entire subject material which has been given by the institute is more than enough, and it's sufficient at this point of time. I will not advise to refer any other where you be updated with the latest developments. You can refer it, but otherwise, I don't think a need to refer to any other material. As regards revising is concerned, you can make your own notes like what I have created while we discuss the matters, subject topics. You can refer them. Okay, I will upload the key government institution wala presentation. Don't worry. Immediately after the session, I will do that. So make your own notes, refer them, have your own approaches, study at the peak hours, identify your peak hours, dull hours, and wish you all the best. I think you all will succeed. Don't hesitate to put in the effort required, and I think the success will be yours. So that's it from my end, guys. It was really a wonderful uh, time we had with you all, and thanks for the opportunity to the institute. Thank you so much, and God bless you guys. Take care. So tomorrow we'll have a doubt clearing session, 1 hour doubt clearing session.